Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm working on a 2015 Mustang GT. As you can see, I'm working on the shifter bezel and it came apart and broke in my hands. Now this is the second time I'm rewrapping it and it's from a failure of the glue that I was using. I will not disclose the brand because the point of this video is not to badmouth another company. But as you can see here, these factory shifting bezels always have problems. I had a problem with the chrome vinyl wrap that they put on there, and that started to peel off, and that's why I actually painted it the first time. Then, of course, after a few years, I did want to have a different style, so I used a vinyl faux leather to wrap, and the glue started to fail on that. What you can see here, which I have in my hands right now, is not that material. That's the factory material where that heat stitch is starting to pull, and the plastic also broke. So right now, I'm going to put a little bit of super glue on the plastic itself to try and get those two pieces back together and salvage this panel so that we can reuse this bezel one more time, and then we can press in that factory material. Now, has anyone else dealt with this before? I've been looking for aftermarket companies that make a full metal piece. I know that they're not really popular to use metal with some interior panels nowadays, but I really would like an alternative to this bezel besides one that just goes over with 3M and gives you that kind of aluminized look. Alright, as you can see here, I'm kind of just pressing it down and holding the shape where it needs to go, and this way that the clips can all line up and keep everything nice and straight. Take your time and make sure you can get everything down and held in place, because this is the foundation of what you're going to be putting on, which is the next piece that you're going to wrap with whatever material or paint it with whatever color you want, and then put it back together. Now, not everyone else is going to be dealing with this in two separate parts. As you could tell, mine broke apart in my hands in my meme that I made in my shorts, which you can go and check out. So this is why I'm still repairing it in two sections versus just wrapping the outside bezel to the shifter handle location. Now, you don't have to worry about putting too much super glue as long as you're not letting it leach through into the actual fabric on the opposite side. As you can see right here, I also had a problem with this separating from the actual fabric, heat pressed in there with that weld that they do for the plastic from factory. So I'm rubbing in some super glue in here. This way that reverse gear lockout, that plastic bezel, whatever you want to call it, will go back onto the shifting bezel, and that way we can have it nice and secure. This is a nice 25-cent fix. You can go get some super glue from Harbor Freight. Comes in a 4-pack for like $1, and you only use maybe a quarter of a tube. So now we're gonna move on to the next section after I let this dry. As you can see here, I'm turning it around to show you that everything realigned and everything was back together. The plastic's holding, and it gives you that rigidity that you need, and a quick little easy fix. And that way you don't have to worry about breaking out some epoxy or anything else like that, or buying a new piece. Alright, we're at the point now where we're going to pull off the old faux leather material that was marine grade, so it wasn't going to deteriorate, but there was a problem with the glue, whether it was a issue from the manufacturer, whether the glue was old. We're not going to worry about that anymore. We're going to pull off everything on there, any old glue that's holding on there, any residue, any little pieces of hot glue. If I use that just to hold down the corner before when I actually put the actual cement on there first. As you can see, I did have it painted that nice blue color, which was originally the color of my outside accessory panels and stuff like that on my car. And then I wanted to change with some new material on the inside. As you can see, these two halves do fit together, but they will need to be pressed and glued down correctly. That way they can hold again because they did break apart. Now, this wasn't supposed to be in two separate sections, so we're going to have to solve that, and we're going to use some clips to hold it down. Press down again, hold its shape. As you can see here, it's still going to fight us a little bit. We're going to try our best with that area that was repaired to. As it's still curing, and you have about 24 hours for any glue to do a full cure. Sometimes it's less than that depending on the brand. But as you can see here, I'm pulling off anything that's old and residued up on there. Any hot glue, like I said, that was there for holding the material temporarily on certain edges, because I did use that cement instead. So clean up your surface and get it as clean as you possibly can. Alright, when you're done with that, pulling off any residue, we're going to use a multi-purpose cleaner. You can use anything that you want. I'm using some Tough Stuff. We're going to spray that on there. It's a foaming multi-purpose cleaner. This will help me get off anything that's stuck on there before we apply the new material, but we're still going to sand it before that. Alright, once you're done with that, we're going to go get some sandpaper from my garage, and we're going to scrub this down. Alright, I got my piece of sandpaper and my Scotch-Brite pad, and we're going to scuff this up, get it nice and cleaned up and ready to go so that we can put on a new layer of cement or glue. This way we can actually stick this on there and get this material to stay. And this time I'm going to be using a 3M headliner glue. This is a lot more resistant to heat, sagging, or melting because the glue I used before was not compatible with the heat and everything else that was going on in my state, even though it said it was rated for that. As you can see here, I'm using a suede material. The back side does not have the same type of finish that the front does, so you're going to want to make sure you put down the right side. And this is going to be Alcantara basically, or suede, depending on what brand you're buying. I bought a generic brand. It's not Alcantara because that's a specific brand. So we're going to go there. We're going to get on some gloves. And we're going to get this thing all wrapped up and ready to go. Alright, for those of you who haven't been tuning into my channel or are new here, remember to like and subscribe. I'm a small channel working my way up there. And I'm in a 2-bay garage building these classic cars and also working on current ones, showing you all the tips and tricks that I'm learning from my mentors, from myself, and everyone else like that. I've been doing bodywork for over a decade now at this point, and I'm beyond grateful for all my teachers as they all have guided me in the right way, and they all have been able to teach me different things in every different trade. And I'm always looking to try new materials, different tools. As you can see right here, I never used this type of cutter before for fabric, so I wanted to give it a whirl. You can just press it down and it's supposed to leave indentation, but I'm not using enough pressure. And anytime you use a new tool, there's always a learning curve, so you're going to make little small mistakes, or you're going to keep fine-tuning yourself until you can use it more accurately. As you can see here, I'm playing around with it, trying to see how much pressure to push down. I have a piece of cardboard underneath it. It probably would help if I had a firmer surface, so that way the material didn't crunch and get stuck and try to like push away. So here's a good old straight edge, and we're just going to cut these hairs off because it won't really matter. This is the edge. And the edges don't have to be perfect because we're going to be trimming them down closer as we start to press it down onto this bezel. All this is extra material, so fold it up carefully. This is the way they shipped it to me, so it has a few lines in it. I'm not really happy about that, so if I did a bigger panel, I most likely would have to steam this or try to do something else to get it to fit better. Alright, as you can see here, here is the piece that we're going to be using to get this onto this bezel. As you can see, this is the type of glue I'm using, some 3M headliner glue like I said. Spray down a nice even surface all the way around. You can use a little bit more than you think you should. Coat the edges, everything else like that. That way you're not fighting having not enough glue on it. Take your time lining it up. We're going to put this dead center and also spray the bezel with glue itself, and this will help you with the adhesion and make sure that there's enough on both sides. I'm even spraying in the creases where it's still not going to get fabric, because if you have extra glue, it's not going to harm anything once it dries. Now, I'm taking off my gloves. This way I can protect the fabric on the opposite side where the glue is not on. That way we can have no glue spots on this side. As you can see here, this is the suede. It has that pattern where as soon as you stroke it a certain way, it will leave your hand lines in it. So it's a very delicate fiber, and if you try to scrub it clean, you're most likely going to damage it if you do get glue on it. Just to even try and get the glue off of it. Now what you're going to do is press it down all the way around. Slowly start to work it down, and we're going to make sure that we can press it in those areas and all the way down towards the center. We're going to work it around this corner and make sure there's no wrinkles. As you can see, this area got grabbed, so we're going to make sure we pull that wrinkle out, because I was just trying to show you guys with one hand. And as you can see here, we're working it down and we're getting that crease out, and there'll be no more there. Now this is my first time working with suede versus vinyl or any other material, so I'm going to take my time trying to learn how it lays on the bezel and how the fabric adheres and how forgiving it is with stretching it and stuff like that, because you don't want to leave wrinkles or have pull areas. Now it's okay if you do have an occasional wrinkle on the area where you're not going to see it, like on the inside. As you can see here, I'm working it down and pressing it down. You're never going to see it. You're going to see just that 1/4 of an inch on the top. So we're going to trim that edge down if you would like it. I'm probably going to leave some of the fabric tucked underneath so that the shifter bezel can also rely on the pressure of holding down the fabric too at the same time. As you can see here, I'm trying to get that edge crease nice and easy and make sure that it looks nice. Work the material down with your hands and press it down, and this way all the excess gets pushed off of the actual piece and we can trim it off later. Then we're also going to make a relief cut in the center, and then we can work on the rest of the shifter getting tucked in. Now go right in the center to see what you're going to cut out, like this, and make an X pattern or a T. Take your time because you're not going to want to cut too little off, and then you're not going to be able to wrap it around the edges. Alright, when you have it done and cut off, take the excess out. And now we're going to slowly start to make more relief cuts all the way around so we can tuck it. Now, I'm sure there's other methods to make this a little easier, but this is just what I have done. You guys can use this method to what you want to, or just take what you can from it and make it work for yourself. Now, unfortunately, since I already did this piece twice before with different material and painting it, the underneath does not look good and it's also separated. And I'm not worried about that. I'm not looking for that down below with how the bottom of the piece is, where it is not even shown in the car. So I can live with a little bit of bunching on the fabric and stuff like that, as long as the top is not wrinkled, because you can always trim off the excess, but like I said, I might leave some of it on there to help pull the material down and hold it later on, even though you won't need it with this glue. Alright, right now it's a really rough point, so just know that you have to just trust the process and start working on the outside, and the underneath and everything else like that will tie together, and we still have to glue the two separate pieces together. So now, as you can see here, I'm slowly starting to trim off the excess to make it a little easier for when I attach the two pieces back together. Take your time so you don't cut yourself, and don't be too critical on yourself, because like I said, this is the underneath. You're not going to be seeing that. It's going to be just hidden underneath the actual console. But you're still going to want to make sure all your corners are adhered, so you can always use a little bit more from the headliner adhesive container and spray it in there and hold it down and press it in there. Alright, once you're all trimmed up, we can take a look at the top side and see how we are doing so far. Everything looks so good so far. As you can see in these areas, we got a little bit more adhesion if we need to, but we still have to press those two panels back together, and I'm very happy with the overall look so far, especially with it being such a fragile piece and going back together. So as you can see here, I already started to press the two together back on there. I am missing one of the front clips that broke off, unfortunately, but I used some super glue and I also used some epoxy to press these two panels back together. And as you can see here, I'm working it in, walking around with my fingers per se, pressing down the edges to make sure everything is on there and Alright, I'm going to use some of these clips that have the rubber guards on them to hold it down on both sides, and this will clamp it together. Now I'm going to add a few more dabs of super glue in those areas where it was hot pressed. This way it can work itself in there and also hold the fabric down too. I used a little bit of the extra fabric. Like I said, it's okay to be a little wrinkled on the underneath where you're not going to see it. That way we can also use it to hold the two panels together with this glue, like I said, so that excess will press down on there. Now I assume we'll get a few more years out of this piece, not because of the fabric, just because the material is so thin and fragile on the plastic end. But this is definitely a cheap and affordable way to upgrade your shifter bezel, especially if the chrome is wrinkling and everything else like that, or your plastic is breaking and you just want to get a little bit more life out of it. This is my second shifter bezel, and I can tell you something about how the quality of the OEM ones are, unfortunately. And a lot of OEM parts are okay, but this one is just one of their weak links. Alright, what you saw me do there was spray a little bit of vinyl dye to make sure everything looked extra good and gives it a fresh new look and looks almost like new. And we're going to spray a little extra right here. Alright, we're finally done and we're letting it dry, and then we're going to reinstall in the morning. But this is what it looks like, and I'm so much happier with what it looks like now versus yesterday. Alright guys, remember to like and subscribe and look for the video of it being installed.